Do you identify as a black man?
I do identify as a black man. I think mostly because people have labeled me as black. It's obviously I am black. It's hard not to identify as black having the skin that I do. But really, I think if I had a choice, I would be Italian. But the arbitrary nature of race kind of makes it hard not to identify as black.
Do you identify as a black man?
Yes.
Yeah. Is there anything else you identify as, like, within that?
I think that's pretty much it, really. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think I identify as an African American man, mostly because I've never been to Africa. Although I understand that's not part of the entire use of that identification, but it just doesn't really seem me. Because my mother was black, my father was black, and don't really have any track of my ancestry. Apparently, my father's parents were Native American, but nobody has any sort of record or anything, so it's hard to really know anything. So I've just settled on black. Although my mother's mother thought I think she thought she was white. So it's tricky there. Because she was light skinned, and that's a difficult part in my history of, because I am in college, if you hadn't noticed, and around other black people, that's sort of like a sort of a touchy subject, especially if they didn't go to college, because it's sort of like, do you think you're better than everyone else? And so that's sort of been like a feeling throughout my life. I went to, like, every school I've gone to has been like Whitman. Actually, Whitman has a little bit more diversity than all my other schools. So usually, other black people, I would just see them outside of school, and there's just always been a sort of, do you think you're better than us? Do you think you're, like, different or special? And it's been not so fun, but it's also made being at Whitman not as hard, just because that's kind of always been the thing. So it was weird to come here and then have, like, no black people in town. And I was like, weird. But then to see other black people at the same school and have classes with them, which I hadn't had before. So it's been an interesting mix-up, and also strangely more diverse than normal for me. It's weird. Yeah, but Colorado is love. I also play tennis, which is a sport where there is never any other black people.
Do you identify as a black man?
Yes.
Do you want to expand on that at all? Like,
Yeah, I guess my experience has been kind of different from, I guess, a lot of, I guess, black males, particularly like African Americans, because both my parents are African. They were born pretty much. My dad was born and raised in Nigeria. My mom was born in Kansas, and she was raised in Nigeria. They did that just so she could have American citizenship right off the bat. It's pretty valuable, all across the world. And so I was raised with like a heavy African influence. So I consider myself pretty African, even though I was raised in California. Born and raised in California, and so I guess I noticed like, sometimes I didn't really fit in with like all the black kids, I guess, like at my church and stuff, because there weren't that many at my school. Went to a predominantly white school, so it was kind of, I don't know, it's kind of different just to see like the different values and stuff like that with African students and black students and white students.
do you identify as a black man?
Yes.
You want to expand on that?
I identify as a black man in my culture, practices, rituals, etc. I love to eat food that is prepared by predominantly black people, which obviously can be prepared by anyone, but it probably originated from African Americans. I love music made by African Americans. I love my family who's African American. I love everything that is our culture. But I don't necessarily identify as a black guy in the sense of like surface level racism and surface level like how you see me and how you're like how you I will never say Like if I was, say, if I was telling a story about myself. This is weird, but say if I was telling someone about myself, I would never describe myself as, oh yeah, I'm the black so and so, whatever. I would just say I probably would say I'm a Dominican so and so, whatever, because that's also a part of my culture that I identify strongly with. But I would never ever put myself, like, or if I was out of body experience, I would never describe myself as that. But anyway, so yeah, and if that makes sense, through my culture.
What's your ideal racial makeup of Whitman College?
I don't know that. Okay. I think that there. I maybe. Okay. I'm close. I think it's hard to say that I even have an ideal racial makeup for Whitman. I think it's a little bit weird having so few black people, but I can't say that having more would make it like better. I think it would just be different. Where I'm from, there's a lot of black people, a lot of Latino people, but it's so maybe it feels a little bit isolated here. But I don't know that there is like a number that I could put on it that would feel right.
What is your ideal racial makeup of Whitman?
Oh. That's a difficult one, just because it seems like there's this polarization between like black and white, and then black sort of sometimes includes just all brown people. And so at first I was going to say 50-50, but there's so many more groups other than white and not white. So I mean, I'd like to see maybe around like 20% black people. I'm just thinking of like the top of my head, like 20% black people, maybe like 20% white people, 20% African people. There's a whole lot of other places. Like if you say Asia, there's basically, I think we could use a lot more diversity from a lot more different areas. And definitely increasing the amount of diversity we already have, especially Native American people. Yeah, they're not very well represented here at all. So probably like 20% each group. Is that enough? 15.
Do you think there's 6 or 7 groups, or?
That's the difficult part. I don't know.
Do you think those people should come from the U.S. or like globally?
I'd like to see more people from the U.S. that are from diverse backgrounds, just because there's a lot out there, and although there's a lot of people around the world as well, that's tricky. But I definitely would like to see more people from the U.S. from diverse backgrounds, because it seems like a lot of the people here from the U.S. we have a lot of similarities, and it's hard to find some people talking about things that you hadn't even really considered. You know, there's a lot of similar like thoughts, mindset.
What's your ideal racial makeup of Whitman?
My ideal racial makeup, well, that would be, I'd say 50% students of color, and then 50% probably like Caucasians. Probably say that, yeah.
Cool.
I'd want it to be like representative of the world that we live in, or at least America. Probably not the world we live in, more of at least America, the country that we live in, but maybe a little bit augmented with more minorities. Yeah.
What's your ideal racial makeup of Whitman?
Well, I mean, the Miss America answer would be to have equal percentage of every type of culture here. But I guess just a mix, a good mix, a healthy mix where I can experience everyone's background and all different types of people, not just like a predominant of one or like spurts of others, just where I can interact with people in different ways and have just a good balance of just different types of culture.
What's it like being a black man at Whitman College in Walla Walla?
Being a black man at Whitman feels very feels kind of alone. It doesn't feel unsafe at Whitman. It's a very safe place. I feel like I have a lot of allies, but it is weird coming from such a racially diverse area to be so isolated, and I almost feel as if I have to represent black people whenever I talk and in how I act, which is a very new feeling. It feels isolating, not necessarily unsafe, but definitely weird.
What is it like being a black man here at Whitman College in Walla Walla?
Ooh, that's a strange one. There's not a lot of black people here in Walla Walla, which is weird. I'm used to seeing more black people around. It's a bit strange just because I feel kind of I don't know, like limited edition. Just because, specifically children, when you see children around, they kind of stare a little bit more. I haven't been asked here, but like in Colorado, um, sometimes children ask like, "Why are you black?" Just because like they haven't been around a lot of black people. So it's strange. I feel kind of like a rare import here, and at Whitman, it's not as bad because of as separating, othering, because of clubs. I go to Club Latino. I like that one, and so I feel like I get some support here for as being like a minority or part of the diversity that everybody's trying to get more of apparently. But it is a bit strange because I don't take any history courses, so I don't really see any other black people at all, except for the basketball team guys every once in a while.
What is it like being a black man here at Whitman in Walla Walla?
Being a black man here at Whitman and Walla Walla, there's not many of us around. I'm sure you've noticed. But it's like it's it's less of a shock than I thought it was going to be, because I knew that coming in here that there weren't that many of us here. But everyone that I've seen that like the students of color and not of color, they show me love and everything. I've heard of like some problems arising with other students of color, but not necessarily me directly. So for me on my part, I don't want to put words in everybody else's mouth, but for me, it's been a fine transition here. Yeah.
Cool. And have you had any strange experiences in Walla Walla?
In Walla Walla, no, not at all. Well, there was like one strange experience where like there was some guy talking about he likes hunting, and he was saying like I'm not a fan, really much of a fan of hunting, but he was like, yeah, I like hunting. You know my saying, if it's brown, shoot it down. And I was like, oh, interesting. I was not a fan, but you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure he's talking about animals and everything,
Yeah.
but that was just a weird saying for me. But yeah.
What is it like being a black man here at Whitman College in Walla Walla?
You're an anomaly, I mean, obviously. This is the main story that I always tell. Is that on my way to a basketball game, going from in like not too far from here, like I think still in Oregon though, but still a small area just like Walla Walla. And so Walla Walla's a little bit nicer than where we were, I think, because where we were was a little bit more stranded. But just had a guy in a gas station to asked to take a picture with me because I was black and also because I was a basketball player. And that's the way he worded it. And that sounds so weird, like out of context, and even in context, it just sounds weird that someone would like say that to me. That someone would ask to take a picture with me and add the like racial part of it, almost like a basketball player and race is like synonymous.
Mm-hmm.
and that's just like the story that is like the most extreme. I don't think it comes out as much at Whitman and Walla Walla. I think everybody's racism is very subdued because of everybody's walking on eggshells around here because of everything that's happening around the country with cops killing black guys and just all the different racial things have spurted. And I mean, Donald Trump isn't helping, obviously, and so you see all these different things, and so it becomes even more like tiptoe, tiptoe, tiptoe. And I think Whitman being the very passive aggressive place that it is, I don't know. It's weird. It's like it's not being taught. It's not being taught to be like out like it's like subtly racist because like some people have like mentioned like my hair, or, like trying to do that and that kind of thing, and they're not obviously it's not malicious or anything like that, but it still is like it's racist to ask me if I can touch your hair because it's just like, and it's not rude. It's not necessarily mean. It is just like it's not something that you would do like in any other like sense. It's just like a decorum type thing. So things like that is like they're very subtle and very small, but they're still there and they still mean something. And so that's what it's like to be a black man at Whitman, in the sense that you're not going to be understood as much, and so like you kind of have to explain yourself a little bit more because there's not that many of us here, and. Yeah, I don't feel uncomfortable. It's probably because I've been around this all my life. So and so that's different too. Is like I'm a different kind of person to ask because I've had a lot of friends who have come from either predominantly black neighborhoods or predominantly black schools or both, and so they're not really like used to as many white people being around them. So that's like a culture shock type thing. So it's interesting having both sides of like white people not really understanding who you are, but at the same time, you're not necessarily like totally like totally removed from white culture or any other culture that is here, but obviously it's mainly white people. Yeah, so just trying to interweave myself into the society without trying to bring too much attention to myself.
My name is Marco, and I'm a first year from the Bay Area.
I'm Zach Turner, a junior from Denver, Colorado.
I'm a first year, class of 2019. I am my name is Olusegun Shodipo, or you can call me Shagun Sadipo. Yeah.
I am Evan Kyle Martin. I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada, and I am a senior.
I remember when I was young, one of the first times that race came up was when one of the earlier times that I remember was when Oscar Grant was shot at BART station in Oakland, and my dad had a talk with me that a lot of black men have when they're young about the police and about something. It's like something that I shouldn't necessarily fear, but something that I have to be aware of, and it was the first time that I realized that I was perceived by society a little bit differently than my white friends, just because of the color of my skin. It wasn't something that had really been on my mind much before that.
What was the first time you encountered race in your life?
Let's see. Third grade, and I was just kind of chillaxing. We were in class. It was Black History Month. We're talking about like civil rightsy stuff and whatnot, and then just I don't know how it came into his mind, but one of the other little kids, he was like, "Yo," and he just kind of like stood up and pointed at me. He's like, "My dad has a word for your people," and then he said the N-word. And that was the first time I really sort of came face to face with that, because I mean, I go home and tell my mother, and she's like, "Whoa, that's not acceptable." and there ended up being a big conflict between talking to this child and talking to his parents, and the school not really wanting to do anything about it. And I ended up not going to school for about like 2 weeks while this whole issue was settled, because the teacher was exposing a bit of his own internal flaws in this whole process, and it really made me realize, oh, this is something to be wary of. So that was the first time that I really remember being confronted with race. Aside, of course, from the fact that my hair is different than everybody else's. I can't have that cool, like, Laxbro hair. I always wanted that hair, but no.
In my life, it was third grade. I remember we took a class picture, and I went to a predominantly white school, so it was like me, and then this other kid named Kane. He was black, but he was mixed, so he was pretty light skinned, fairly light skinned. And so I was the darkest one in my class, and so when we took a class picture, I think there were shadows, and I couldn't see myself. And I was like, where am I? I was like, was I in this picture? The teacher was like, yeah, you're in the picture. You're right there. And I finally saw it, because you could see other people because they're white. You could see like them and the contrast in the shadows. And then you see me, and it's like I'm erased from the picture because I was dark and everything. And I was like, wow. That's when it really hit me. Like I am different than the people that I'm surrounded by. You know?
I'm just gonna be super honest right now, and just like, I haven't experienced race like how, like, not most, but like how a lot of how media portrays black men specifically to be treated by race. I grew up in the suburbs. I went to all the schools I pretty much went to were all predominantly white. If any racism came toward me, I was totally oblivious because my head was in the clouds from, well, my head is still in the clouds. Yeah, I don't know. I think my grotesque optimism has warded off a lot of it too. So I don't know. That question has been hard. Just like my race experience, or my racism experience, because I don't know, my path has been different from a lot of people. And I think, and that this isn't to hate on your project or anything like that, but a lot of times when this is asked, which has only really been asked here at Whitman, just obviously, and a lot of times when this is asked, some people have agendas usually, and I'm not saying you do obviously, but like some people do, and so people expect me to give this like spiel or thought process about how the black experience is or should look like or whatever. And usually it's weird because I'm like, dude, I don't really know. I don't really pay attention. I try my best to like know what's going on, but isolate myself from it as much as possible, in the sense of like, don't let race dictate your life. But I am trying to be progressive in the sense that knowing that race is still a problem. So it's like this like weird tandem. It's internally, race in my life hasn't really like been effective because I've been trying to like basically push out of my circle for the longest time. However, where race does show up in my life more so is just trying to either educate people who are wondering or who are asking, or help the problem that obviously exists. And so through films or whatever, I try my best to try to include all different, like, just different cultures and races in order to like, that's my way of like activism, I guess you could say, is like making things with many different cultures and races. But anyway, off my soap. Yeah, race isn't really internal for me, I guess. It's more external, which makes sense, obviously. But
I guess, what was the first time you experienced like this tiptoe that you
Yeah,
talked
that's
about at Whitman?
that's right. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't answer your question. I'm sorry. I encourage a lot of my friends to say the N word um, because I don't think that I don't think it's a word to be afraid of anymore. I think if we appropriate it in a way that is meaningless, or at least it only means like friend or homie or whatever, how I say it, um, I think it's just another great step to like diffusing like these racial boundaries. If, obviously, that's like very extreme, and most white people are not going to be saying nigga all the time. But I still tell my friends, yeah, say it to me. I don't care because I think that matters. So someone asked me that this is where I kind of encountered this like tiptoeing this like blatantly. It's like someone asked me like, "Oh, you're okay with me saying?" And I was like, "Yeah," and they were like very hesitant about like saying the word, but apparently they'd said it before, and and that's okay. Like it doesn't matter, and because obviously it's in all kinds of music, and so if you're singing a song, it's kind of weird to like bleep yourself. And so I found that a lot of my friends like do that, and they asked me personally like around me, how do I feel about it, and I said I could care less. And so I think that's where I encounter race mostly, and, like especially here. It's just like either people asking me about something or people doing something and not really sure about it, and then like me like talking about it. It seems so. It's not really anything like directed toward me per se. It's usually me like talking about it in some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first times race came up at Whitman was during orientation. We were asked to share an experience that made us feel marginalized, and I shared a story of last year. I was pulled over by a police officer near my house for no reason. He ran my license and told me to leave. I shared that story, and it was, I think, in sharing it and addressing it, made me kind of realize that maybe it was something that a lot of people in the room hadn't talked about much. It was certainly not only an experience to have been pulled over, but also to share it in this environment. It's an environment that I haven't talked about that in.
In the fall of my senior year, before I had submitted my application, because I applied early decision, so it was before that timeline, I found out that Whitman has this thing called the Visit Scholars Program, so I applied for that, and they paid for me to fly out and stay a couple days. And they do, it's sort of like a long prospective student thing where you do some financial aid info stuff, and you stay with a student, and you have like a little get together with the other people that are participating in the program, and there were quite a few people there. And I noticed that they were like all I think there might have been one white person, but for the most part they were all minorities. And the criteria was first generation working class. So your parents didn't go to college or get like a 4-year degree or more than that. And I was like, it didn't seem to me like that would be a racial divide, but it definitely seems like it is. And like the club here, the FGWC class, is definitely like has a predominantly minority club, I want to say. And so that was the first time I really came face to face with race being a way of distinguishing people at Whitman. Because the actual makeup of the campus with um, mostly white students, some black students, Latino, Hispanic students. It was rather similar to my high school, so I didn't really notice that at first. But that flying program, I was like, huh.
First time I encountered race here, I think it was like orientation weekend, something like that. I noticed a lot of people kept asking me if I played basketball, and I did wear like a lot of Nike stuff, I guess, because it was hot, so I wore a lot of basketball shorts and stuff. But it's like, no, I don't play basketball. Like, oh, are you sure, or something like that? And I was like, yeah, of course, I know I don't play basketball. Yeah, I thought I saw you play. I was like, no, it was another black kid. It was not me, you know. So, yeah, it's probably pretty quickly when I came on campus. But I'm like, it wasn't anything bad. It was just like observations that I noticed. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being asked these questions feels pretty good. I think it's an interesting thing to talk about. It's on my mind a lot, but not something that I necessarily talk about very often. I think it's a really important thing, though, to talk about, and not only for myself and making me feel less isolated, but also in helping people understand sort of the culture. Again, I don't like to speak on behalf of all black people, but I can tell you personally it feels good to voice this and to bring it up as a discussion.
I think it's interesting. I like that you ask the questions because it seems that. So, I was expecting college to be this very, really, really, really radical place where everybody's just kind of like just hypothesizing the most wild and far out schemes that they can think of, and then trying to develop those, and then just being like the brink of revolution in any field, like math, technology, any of them. And I'm a bit surprised at the unwillingness to talk about some subjects, race being one of them. And it seems like a very, I mean, it flows into every aspect of life. And so I'm happy that you asked me questions about race, because it doesn't seem like it's talked about enough, especially when we talk about like privilege, or or white privilege, and then we stop there. I think race should be talked about a bit more, so I'm happy about that, and I don't really feel uncomfortable talking about it. But that's probably just I'm feeling like that overall. That might be an uncomfortable subject, but I do like talking about it.
I feel fine. Yeah, I feel really comfortable, especially with you. For some reason you have like this really calming presence for me, and so I feel really comfortable.
I mean, I'm glad that you are. I don't know who you're going to show this to, but or I don't know who's going to see this, I should say. But me saying this on camera is beneficial to anyone who watches, because if they don't already know this stuff, I'm glad you're asking, because now people can know. And if you didn't already know, now you know how one black person feels, and then that's just another perspective that you can have. So I'm totally okay with you asking. I think it becomes a problem only when you're asking the same shit. You know, not you, but just like in general, like people keep on asking the same things, or aren't asking for the right reasons. I don't know what the wrong reasons would be per se. I guess more so if they were just asking for like an infomercial or something like that, just to like get a token black guy off, you know.
Hmm.
But other than that, I'm totally okay.
If I were a black man asking the questions versus being me,
Mhm.
what's that distinction? Is there a distinction there?
Perhaps. I mean, I can't say that I've had a lot of relations with other black men, socially or in any real way. There's all my schools. There's been like me, and then like one or two other black people, and then the Latino and Hispanic peoples, and so I would hang out with them. So I don't. It, it seems like I feel more comfortable around Latino or Hispanic people just because I haven't been around a lot of black people. So if you were a black man asking the questions, there would definitely be a different air. Also because when I talk to other black people, there's just this sort of, I don't know, I feel like a bit of apprehension. It might be a bit more difficult because I have my views, my ideas about the other members of my race and what we should be doing collectively, individually, and there's sort of like this apprehension I feel towards other black people, like, well, do we think the same way? Do we agree? And if we don't really agree, there's sort of like a tension because I want to respect them and encourage them, but at the same time, I want them to be like, yeah, Zach, that's exactly what I was thinking. So it's difficult, and I also want to impress them. I can't. That's why I can't say the N-word because I don't have any black friends. Everybody knows that's the only way you can say it is when you have black friends. And I don't have any black friends. I can't say it.
Would you feel different if I was a black man, versus being myself asking you these questions?
Yeah, I would. I don't think I'd answer any of these questions differently, but I guess I'd feel different. There's sometimes, like, to be honest, there's some unspoken bond that you can really share with someone that's of your same color, especially when there's not that many of you out there. But it's just like, even people you wouldn't normally talk to, like, you don't have anything in common at all, but you see him, you give him a nod, you give him a handshake or something. It's something just so you know, like I'm still here, you're still here, we're both here together, you know, even though there's not a lot of us out here, we're still here together, you know. So yeah.
How do you think you would, I mean, maybe you wouldn't, but do you think you would respond differently to these questions if I was a black guy?
No.
No.
Nah. I'm not really into the whole, like, changing myself too much. I mean, like, obviously, like, there's a chameleon-esque to different cultures, and so there's different, like, dialects of languages that you speak with different people. I'm not gonna walk up to a group of, like, white people and, like, just start, like, you know, like, I'm just not gonna do that because it's obviously different. But then again, I don't really.
What does that mean? You're not
that wasn't clear. So I'm not gonna walk up and I'm not gonna just start saying the N-word all over the place and stuff like that because I know that that's not part of their culture and that might make them uncomfortable. However, I'm not gonna, if I'm in a setting of my own setting and I'm just, like, being myself, I'm not going to, like, just like I'm not going to censor myself is what I'm saying. I'm not going to go out of my way to be someone that I'm not. So, like, if you're black, white, doesn't matter. I'm not going to go out of my way to, like, change what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also not going to, like, I'm not going to just, like, start just being all, like, rowdy and stuff like that because just for camera or for you, whatever. So it doesn't really matter. That was kind of a roller coaster answer, but yeah, it doesn't matter that you're not black. I would probably still say the same stuff.
Yeah.